May 2nd, 2011, Pakistan, Pakatonka. Get down, hands on the ground now! I hollered in Arabic language. I pointed my M16 rifle at the leader's head. We had a mission to annihilate the last remaining members of the Al-Qaeda organization, with one of the leaders' location found. Me and two other troops looked around the house to clear of any ambushes, all the while keeping my eyes on the terrorist leader. The leader had his family behind him, a wife and two sons, panicked in the situation. As I was being preoccupied, scanned around the room, the leader's son came from behind, placed his forearms around my neck, tempted to choke me. I threw the boy over my shoulder and kicked him in the chest, all within a swift movement. It's never a good idea to attempt to choke out a highly trained Navy SEAL in midst of danger. The leader's wife took out a knife under her burqa and charged at me. I dodged beside her and swiped the weapon away like a toy. Yet as I did that, the blade sliced my palm, which made me scream, "You motherfuckers," or as they would say in Arabic, "Ay fik shilp." As I aimed my pistol at the leader and the wife, my vision began to blur, sent me back to when I looked at a scared boy at a juvenile detention center. "Shoot them now," my superior called, entering the room. At that moment, without hesitation, I pulled the trigger and the bullet landed to the leader's head, forcing him down to the floor, deceased. The shock and awe wore on the family's faces. "Dispose any witnesses. We take no prisoners, Private," my superior ordered. My vision began to fade after I pulled the last remaining bullet on the family. May 2nd, 2011, United States military base of Pakistan. I woke up from the barracks with a hard headache. "Ugh, what time is it?" I asked a colleague right in front of me. "Oh, you're awake? It's only 17 o'clock. That mission really took a toll on you, huh, Hellraiser?" My colleague John replied. "Hellraiser? What are you talking about?" "Well, while you were taking your well-deserved nap, and I guess dreaming about how you killed those terrorists earlier today, you were talking in your sleep, something between you and a pastor about sin. We all thought that you need a cool codename based on your performance out there, so congrats for letting us know what America is all about." The codename is all too sudden for me. I done nothing more than a mission that needed to be done. The name Hellraiser is something I'm not too keen on, especially that I grew up in a strict Christian household in Chicago, Illinois. There are a lot of things you should know about me later on for the story to make sense of it. Loud cheering noises roared behind the barrack walls. "Anyway, we're celebrating tonight. Come on down to the common area when you're ready, Hellraiser," John stated as he patted his back before he left the area. Whatever he felt about the whole situation, I couldn't reciprocate. I couldn't stop thinking about how the mother tried to protect her son by attacking me. What else could I have done? It was his life or theirs. No right, no wrong. I was just following orders in a dangerous situation. They're connected to other terrorist groups in the Middle East and betrayed our country. I couldn't have let them live. Those were the thoughts I contemplated as I held my head with sweaty palms. I left the bed and headed on to the shower. Later, I headed down to the common area to participate in the party. "There he is, my boy," my superior announced, walking towards me. "Everyone, pay attention. Today, Cleon Jackson, an exceptional SEAL, saved countless lives by eliminating one of the heads of the Al-Qaeda organization. This sends a message to them that we take no shit for what they did in our country. He's the finest and bravest soldier we could ever ask for. Give him hell, Hellraiser," he announced with a big chug from his beer glass. The whole room cheered and done the same. As the party went on, all I did was sat on my chair, not talk to anyone. I still couldn't brush off what happened today. I was never a guy who loved the attention. As a matter of fact, this amount of encouragement and love was something I never grew up on, ever since my grandpa passed away. Every time when I wasn't concentrating on my thoughts, all I spot were conversations on how they were all fighting for their country, how the U.S. is the best country in the world, and how they would die to protect it. I continued to look at other SEALs. Some of them waved U.S. flags with one hand while drinking with the other. I couldn't relate to any of it. I didn't have the same views on what was going on as them. I joined the military for a completely different reason. I am an African American man, grew up in a gang-controlled environment in South Side of Chicago. I saw things that no child should ever have to witness. Drive-bys and murders on the streets, women harassed and raped each time they get out from the buildings, children left on sidewalks with syringes in hand, and even shot. I had so many black guys growing up with bigger boys and thugs that picked on me. Every time I fought back or survived a gang initiation, I was the only one who did something wrong and always end up in a juvenile detention centers because of it. Every time I get out, I always ask my pop for advice, and he would always preach the word of God into me. Psalms 23, verse 4 through 10. And he would tell me this: the difference between you and everyone else I know is that you stand in your square and you preserved your beliefs and everything that was thrown at you. God don't help anybody who don't help themselves. That all changed one day that I saw him held by my aunt's arms, crying for 911 to save him. Blood ran coarse on the sidewalk pavement. A drive-by arrived and no one was held responsible for it. That's when I knew that I didn't want to be another corpse on the street. The only option I had was to join the Navy. None of that patriotic stuff. I just wanted to have a better future. I don't have a reason to be proud for serving for this country, as if the government ever done anything for me and my family in this violent, poverty-stricken environment. Man, that was hell of a party, and we all had to thank you for it. Too bad we didn't have any girls on board. I should have bought you one of these Pakistani harems for you. You know what I mean? John told me, intoxicated, barely standing on his own 2 feet. I love you, man. You know that? We're brothers, and nothing can change that. Yeah, I know. Come on, let's get you back to the barracks. You can barely walk, look at yourself. I mildly mocked him as I carried him over to his bed. You have to lose some weight, man. I'm surprised that you made it through basic training with all that. Heavy as they come. I dumped him on the bed and saw he didn't respond. Instead, he let out a loud, pig-like snore that made me chuckle. Of course he would be asleep. Good for him. I went to bed myself and pulled out my book that I bought from a Pakistani market. The Book of Agathia, an old legend by local townspeople about an underground world where God created for the ancient people called the B.B.B, whom come to the surface to protect his chosen beings. Almost as though it's the Sumerian text was the way it was encrypted, but it included creatures that resembled like dinosaurs, saber-tooths, and all that. It's a little bit odd, another one of those John Carter type of stories, but I like them. They help me escape reality. Diving into the culture and literature keeps me stimulated and sane most of the time, especially from what happened earlier today. 24 o'clock, United Pakistani Military Base. The noise outside abruptly woke me. I looked out the window to see that everything was pitch black. What the hell is what went through my mind? Nothing like that ever happens on base. I changed into my uniform and grabbed my flashlight to see what was going on. After I walked out of the building, I approached the SEAL to see what happened. He replied that a power outage happened and the cables inside the breaker were gone. John proceeded to find them, however, we hadn't heard from him since. John has been my comrade in my entire career in the Navy. It didn't sit well with me, leaving him out without backup. I agreed to take on the task and proceeded to examine the circuit breaker. After examining the circuit box, I looked down to see small specks of blood that formed a trail leading outside the military camp. I kneeled down on one knee to examine it, and surely enough, I wasn't wrong. Right then and there, I thought of John. I grabbed my camouflage jacket, an M1 911 pistol, and began following the bloody trail. I continued following the trail for about 15 minutes outside the base. Outside was nearly pitch black, and I only had my flashlight and the moonlight to keep me in sight. I'm a United States Navy SEAL from Chicago. I use the darkness as a weapon, so nothing can intimidate me. I walked among the darkness for about 15 minutes, following the trail of blood. I stopped at the entrance of the forest, which was in the vicinity of the base. Sweat ran down my cheeks. The thought of someone kidnapping John just gets me shook up. I proceeded inside, carefully watched my steps, as if no snakes or other animals would attack. However, something was off about this forest. The pine trees, the leaves were sharp, thin, gave a hollow noise every time the wind blew. The trees were so spacious, it's like every dark space between them felt as though someone was watching me. I don't know why, but I continued to walk until the leaves and vegetation on the ground had made the blood trail disappear. I still have to find them, even if I had to go down the hard way. A loud squeak came from behind. I turned around to see that there was nothing but trees, leaves, and darkness. "Officer Jackson of the United States Navy, show yourselves," I yelled in Arabic. Nothing but footsteps raced closer behind me. Every time I walked, the footsteps became louder and louder. My breathing got heavy and the adrenaline began pumping my veins. I held my pistol in my right hand ready. I looked back and forth as I picked up the pace. Still not a single being in sight, except a carved, caved mass by the old tall oak tree. Not one, but two of them appeared to be creeping closer to me. The way they moved was very serpent-like. The language they spoke was not Arabic, it was sort of a jumble. I had to hide knowing they outnumbered me. I knew that when I go in there, that no one could sneak behind me. I'll be the one controlling the terrain, safest option that there was. As soon as I took the first step inside, I felt a little lightheaded from the metallic scent from the air. It must be the adrenaline doing this to me. The cave was something different. It wasn't just a rock formation. It felt like a mystical sort of energy. My skin felt hot each step I take. The weather outside was freezing cold, yet right there in the cave, the temperature was just high. So I took off my jacket and placed it on my forearm before walking forward. Each step, I felt out of breath. The walls felt like they were moving, rocking back and forth, no pun intended. I placed my hand on the wall and found it to be still, yet it was ice cold. The atmosphere felt hot, yet the walls are frozen. Weird, I thought to myself, blowing hot air onto my hand. The flashlight flickered on and off, losing its illumination. It makes the entire environment much more eerie. A crackling noise abrupt the room, almost a bird-like cackle with a type of sound. "Who's there?" I yelled, walking forward and hearing the crackles again. The crackling noise intensified. I crouched behind the rock and turned off my flashlight. My vision began to blur. Yet I saw a silhouette of a large, bird-like creature snooped around the area as if it's looking for something. A characteristic that I could not shut out was that large, sickle-like claw on its big toe, large enough to puncture a lung in one slice. I had to shut my mouth closed and my eyes tight. The flashback came to me, images of my grandpa dead on the church pavement when I was young. It wasn't my fault. I couldn't tell him. I was afraid of what they'll do to me. My visions came back to me and the dizziness was gone. I looked around to see nothing but darkness. I continued walking forward. My senses got more impaired, and due to my flashlight dying, I could barely see anything. It felt like I'm walking in circles for eternity. I saw a light of flame lit a few feet ahead of me, only covering a small section of the tunnel, only orange light in the middle between the blackness. I felt something on my foot that made me trip on the ground. I looked up to see a mangled body of a man. I turned on the flashlight once more to see an open corpse butchered in front of me. I held back the vomit that came out from this. I looked up to see that the head was held on a spear. The blood-soaked head happened to be John's. I had tears ran down through my face. Why did it happen to you? Why not just me? After all the pain I caused in others, why him? God, just please take me. I gotta wake up to the realization that John's body was found and the cables to the circuit were obtained. That's when I knew I wasn't alone and I did not belong here. I had to leave. The air was getting thinner, making it unbearable to breathe. Then I spotted a silhouette of not an animal, but a man with a fur coat crawling away to the rocks. I ran as fast as I could away from the scene to get away from the figure. Much more compact, making it less spacious to move. I felt a little claustrophobic. The light was a distance ahead of me. There comes the exit at last. Fresh air startled and hit my face, easing the dizziness. Before I could move further, a large silhouette blocked my entrance. I finally stopped and turned off my flashlight. I crouched still for a couple minutes. As I looked up with my flashlight, there it was. A large bird, almost as tall as I was, dead at me, poker face. It had a long tail and a wingspan of like 80 inches. A combination of feathers covering its lizard-like body. Blood dripped down from its snout. For a big bird that I couldn't call that snout, I couldn't call that a beak. It's almost a mouth with fangs. I looked down and I saw its sickle-shaped claw on its big toe, tilted its head forward, and sprint toward me with lightning speed. I somersaulted away from the attack in a quick second and ran towards the exit. The beast pounced itself towards me, missed me with its sharp teeth. I pulled my pistol and shot at it. The attack barely affected the creature, only aggravating it. It grabbed my leg and slammed me against the wall. The force was so great that it seemed that I didn't weigh much to it at all. And I weighed like 180 pounds, 6'3". I felt a stinging pain in my right hand. It appeared to be a wooden bear trap clung onto my hand, dripped lots of blood. Damn it, I yelled out. The creature proceeded further with its sharp teeth, and by instinct, I used my trapped hand to stuff its mouth. By instinct, I stuffed my trapped hand inside its jaws. I felt its hot breath melting me, crushing the wooden trap each second. I noticed its left foot, that a claw was absent. It clearly has been in other battles. I took advantage of it after I pulled the broken trap from its jaw. I stomped my foot on its toe before it could make another slice with it. I rolled away and found a blue-tipped spear next to me to grab, and stabbed the creature's foot with it. The beast let out a loud shriek. I ran across the rock bridge leading to the white light. As I ran into it, I tripped from a large branch that led me to roll forward onto the dirt. I looked up to see 5 men dressed in fur pelts that covered their backs with wooden carved masks. One of them held fire in their hand, which only allowed me to see their slim stature, scarred, swarthy torso, and blood on their hands. The man in the middle crouched in front of me with a knife toward my throat in hand. I brushed the hand away as the 2 other natives trapped my hands from behind and yanked my head near them. Those men were incredibly strong for their size, smaller than I was. They speak in their jumbo language and proceeded to take me near the bush beside them. I struggled as much as I could. Then from the trees, I saw another silhouette of a large lizard head approach, let out a loud rumbling noise. It crashed through the trees and stomped the ground with its gigantic foot. I headbutted the native, which dropped its mask. The natives let go and ran as fast as they could away from the beast. I noticed the beast dropped something from its mouth. I spotted that large bird that attacked me earlier, with its eyes just wide open, shocked and awe, and can see better image of what it is. I looked up to see a large version of the same bird but it was the size of an elephant. Maybe bigger, but much more menacing. And I could see it had very tiny arms on the side. I had no time to waste. I left as soon as possible. I could never forget that rumbling roar that it produced, which haunted me in my bones. I took their masks and ran out from the cave and through the woods. Unfortunately, the trail stopped in a shallow river crossing the forest. It seemed like it was already noon. It hit me that I spent so much time in the cave that a whole hour in there turned into 12 hours outside. I knew that I had to report to the base what it was. That thing, from what it appeared, it couldn't be those things. They've been extinct a long time ago. That cave, it led me to another world in there. I approached the SEALs about the situation. They were all glad that I was alive. However, I told them that John was deceased and told them the rest what happened. My superiors escorted me inside the medical room and later interrogated me as I was bandaged up. We will have a funeral set for John. We tried looking for you two inside the forest, yet me and a couple other troops had found 5 men with wooden skull masks and fur pallets from the trees. They didn't even move, just single twitch. So we proceeded slowly inside to the cave to get away from them. Yet we just recorded a high amount of carbon monoxide in there. Like, it's a miracle you even survived this long. We thought we had to grab a gas mask to get in there. Trust me, I didn't even know, I was breathing in that much carbon monoxide. It just didn't make any sense how I survived in there without a mask. I really could have died. That still haunts me to this day. Oh, there was something else. We found a sickle claw not far from the body. It was covered in flesh, and I wondered what kind of animal it could be. We all put our heads together, but couldn't quite figure it out, my superior said. I stopped in my tracks. I took a deep breath and looked in my commander's eyes. I have a pretty good idea of what it is. Come on, I have to tell you all something. I took out my book, Agathia, and then continued walking towards them, explaining the rest.